UFC Fight Night, Garry versus Prates is this week. I'm going to give you a full card prediction and breakdown of all 14 fights on this card, starting with Chelsea Chandler versus Joselyne Edwards. I'm going to go with Joselyne Edwards here. I believe Chelsea Chandler came down from, 145 or something like that. Hasn't looked too great. Lost to Yana Santos, who I don't think is good at all. Lost, 8 months ago. Beat Joselyne Muniz, and Joselyne Muniz didn't really look too great recently. She just lost to, Priscilla Cachoeira. And then you had that weird meme of Chelsea Chandler just running away from Norma Dumont in the cage. She hasn't looked very good in her last few fights. Joselyne Edwards has a decent ability on the feet at range. I think she's going to do decent work with her kicks here. I think she's just going to be a little bit better. And she's, 5 years younger. I like her in this fight. She's going to have a little bit of a reach advantage as well. A lot of people are picking Joselyne Edwards by decision. This is a lower level women's MMA fight. It could go either way. But I am going to side with Joselyne Edwards, just playing the range game and just outpointing Chelsea Chandler in this fight. So let's move on. We have Timmy Cuamba versus Roberto Romero. Roberto actually looked pretty good in his last fight against David Onama. I believe he stepped in on short notice, dropped David Onama pretty early in that fight, and his hands actually looked pretty good. Like, he was landing pretty well on David Onama. Eventually got broken down in that fight, but I think a lot of that had to do with him taking the fight on short notice. Timmy Cuamba is very hittable. He did have a decent contest against Oki. I mean, Oki's a decent prospect, very athletic, isn't the best fighters in the world, but the thing with Cuamba, I just think he's just too hittable at times. And Romero, even the commentary mentioned it at certain points in his fight against Onama, who's a pretty decent striker as well, decently high level, probably fringe top 15 guy in Onama, and he was doing a really good job. He was busting up the legs of Onama, mixing in his game pretty well on the feet. So I do like Roberto Romero in this fight on a full training camp against Tim Cuamba here. Minus 120 might be a decent look betting-wise for this one. But I'm going to go Roberto Romero by decision. Let's move on. We have Jaqueline Amorim versus Polyana Viana. I'm going to go Jaqueline Amorim. She's had some nice submission wins in her last couple fights. Polyana Viana is kind of on the down slope of her career. She was looking pretty decent for a while. It was against pretty low-level competition. She had a decently competitive fight against Richie. From what I remember, I didn't watch the fight. Just from what I remember covering the fight a couple years ago. Maybe I did cover it. I can't remember if I did or not, but I remember it being decently close. But lost to Yasmin Lucindo, got just out-muscled on the ground. Lost to Jillian Robertson, both kind of submission experts there. Jaqueline Amorim, you can kind of say the same thing against Vanessa Demopoulos. She did a good job. She was on her back, and then she transitioned to an armbar. Decently high level on the ground as well. Polyana Viana, I don't know. It seems like, I don't know if it's like the social media stuff. Like, when people say Polyana Viana, it's not necessarily for her stuff inside the cage. It's the Colby stuff, the Pereira stuff for a little bit. And maybe she's making a bunch of money on her side projects, and she's not really as committed to the game, but she comes out of a nice little gym. I just think Amorim's a little bit more high level at this point in her career. Very good submission expert, who we've seen Polyana Viana lose to in her last couple fights. We'll have a 1-inch reach advantage as well. I'm going to take Jaqueline Amorim by submission, maybe second or third round. I just don't think Polyana Viana is like as committed to the game as she was when she was a little bit younger. So let's move on. We have Cameron Saaiman versus Malcolm Wellmaker. Very interesting fight. Cameron Saaiman is still very young, 24 years of age. His last fight, he did not look too great. Lost to Peyton Talbot, got pretty much broken down. I think I picked Cameron Saaiman in that fight, if I'm remembering correctly. Saaiman was a pretty good prospect as well about a year ago. Was on the come up. I thought he was just going to mix in his takedowns, look really good on the feet. And in his fights, he does a really good job on the feet. He mixes in a lot of leg kicks, a lot of high kicks as well. And he mixes up all the strikes. He's very high level. He trains with DDP, especially from that gym. They're very disciplined. I like him in this fight against Malcolm Wellmaker. I think betting-wise, maybe this is a little bit more 50-50. I do think, as this fight is, I think it is very 50-50 because Malcolm Wellmaker does have decent power in his hands. The opponent he fought, Adam Rommel, I was watching that fight. His opponent did not look high level at all. KO'd him pretty easily. Looked very green in that fight, and he's 30 years of age, almost 31. It's not really what I want to see from a guy who's 31. He just looked very green, especially at 135. Cameron Saaiman has been out for a year, still super young, at a very disciplined gym, which he's going to learn a lot from. You see DDP has done really well at 185. I think Cameron Saaiman's going to win this fight. I think he mixes in his game, mixes in the takedowns, mixes in his strikes. He's going to be at a pretty sizable reach disadvantage here at, 4.5 inches here. It is going to be a little concerning. I am interested to see what he looks like coming off this layoff. I haven't been keeping up too much with what he's been doing outside because I know he was doing like a podcast or whatever. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but I haven't heard much from him at all since the Talbot fight. So a year off, he should have recovered pretty well. Still very young. I think he's going to look a lot better in this fight because he was looking a little bit green when he first started out. Like he's getting some decent wins, but they're decently competitive. But you saw like the talent there. You could see him eventually evolving, and he was getting better after each and every single one of the fights. Like Christian Rodriguez one, it's Christian Rodriguez. He just fraud checks guys and misses weight doing it. So I don't take that fight too much into account. I think he's like a few pounds overweight, so I don't care too much about that fight. I do like Saaiman in this one. Maybe a controversial pick. I'm not too sure. It is 50-50, so I do wonder who is picking Saaiman for this one, but it seems like not a little bit, but a lot of people are picking Wellmaker for this fight. But I'm going to go Saaiman. He's going to mix in his work pretty well. He has had a year off. I'm just expecting him to look a little bit more polished there. in his game. Wellmaker, he didn't look too, for 31, he didn't look too great. And in my opinion, I don't think he's going to get too much better than what I saw in the Contender Series fight. So let's move on. We have Blackshear versus Alateng Heili. I'm going to go Blackshear. I believe he's taking this one off of the last fight against Cody Gibson, won that one by Kimura after 4 weeks off. He's looking to come back right into this fight. He's going to have a 6.5-inch reach advantage, 6 inches. I think he gets maybe a submission win. He does have very high-level grappling. We saw him get the twister, and then he went on short notice against Mario Batista and had a pretty decently competitive fight. A lot of people say Blackshear won that one. I rewatched. I thought Mario Batista won that one, at least clearly in those rounds. It was a competitive fight, but I thought Mario Batista won that one clear. Lost to Montel Jackson. Didn't look great at all in that fight, but came back. Got 2 decent submission wins. Is taking this one 4 weeks after his last fight. Alateng Heili beat Clayton Rodriguez, but that doesn't really mean too much. That was, 10 months ago as well, 33 years of age. Blackshear looks pretty decent on the feet. I don't think Alateng Heili is going to catch him and put him out on the feet. The guys he's losing to is Mario Batista, who's looking closer and closer to top 5, just beat Jose Aldo. Whether it was boring or not, Merab did the same thing, and that seems like the only way you can really beat Aldo at this point in his career, or at least the safest way to beat Aldo, and if you're not like super high level, like a Volk or anything. But yeah, looked pretty competitive against Mario Batista on super short notice. That loss against Montel Jackson didn't look too great, but I don't think Alateng Heili is going to be too much better than him on the feet. Like, I don't think he's going to outclass him on the feet. I don't think he's going to catch him and put him out. He could. I don't think he will, though. I think Blackshear's wrestling is just a pretty decently high level, especially his grappling as well. I think he probably submits Alateng Heili in this one. So let's move on. We have Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. I think I picked John Castaneda a few weeks ago because I think this fight did get rescheduled. Chris Gutierrez, this fight is tricky because Chris Gutierrez does a good job at range, and he does some really good work with his kicks. He does a lot of leg kicks, and I think he can chew up John Castaneda from range here. But John Castaneda, he has a very well-balanced game, in my opinion. I think he has some decent striking. He can mix in the wrestling as well and make it very tricky for guys. I don't think going 5 rounds is as... I mean, Song Yudong's a pretty good fighter, but going 5 rounds is like a participation trophy. I guess he didn't get knocked out is really what it should be. He had 5 rounds, he had 25 minutes, and he didn't get knocked out, so I guess that was decently impressive there. But he literally did nothing in that fight. Isn't a very entertaining fight either. He had that nice one against Frankie Edgar, and that's pretty much it. Lost to Pedro Munoz as well. I want to pick John Castaneda, but I think I'm going to play it safe with Chris Gutierrez in this one. I would not be surprised if he gets beat here. I would not be surprised if John Castaneda mixes in his game pretty well. Maybe takes him down at certain points. My only worry is that he's not going to control him. He's not going to outland him on the feet. I just feel like Chris Gutierrez is just going to do a good job at range, just chewing up the leg of John Castaneda in this one and just outpointing him in this fight. So I'm going to go with Chris Gutierrez, maybe 29-28 decision. It is going to be a closer one than what Tapology is saying, but I'm going to have to stick with Chris Gutierrez. He's very disappointing at times too, so I'm not necessarily looking too much, or at least too forward to this one. So let's move on. We have Evan Elder versus, I think it's Gage Young. It could be Gage. It's probably Gage. He's American. It's definitely Gage. I'm going to go with Evan Elder. Way too high level an opponent here. A very rough matchup for Gage Young. And he does look pretty decent. He did look pretty decent in his Contender Series fight against Salkild. Had some moments, some decent moments, but was just getting out grappled, which is not something you want to see against Evan Elder, or at least before fighting Evan Elder, who's a pretty high level wrestler and grappler, pretty decent on the feet as well. Was doing really good against Nazim Zadikov before. I believe he got stopped due to a cut, but he was probably on his way to maybe winning that fight. Looked pretty good in that one, and then went on to whoop up Gennaro Valdez and Darius Flowers. This is a very rough fight to have on your debut. I'm assuming this is short notice because the last fight was in wherever this was. It was the RNC. What is it? Where was his last fight? Oh, FAC. Sorry, I'm a little slow. But yeah, Evan Elder, very tough fight to have. I think he's just going to out-wrestle and out-grapple Gage Young in this one and win this one to a pretty clear decision. I don't know the betting odds for this one, but I'm assuming he's going to be a pretty sizable favorite for this fight. So let's move on. We have Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. Another tricky one because Jimmy Flick definitely does have some decent power in his hands. However, I think Matt Schnell is just too high level, in my opinion. He has all the skills. He just really doesn't have a chin. We have seen him beat Sumadarji, who didn't have too much power. He was able to recover, and he was getting rocked by him, which is... I thought he was gonna beat Matt Schnell, but he didn't end up doing it. But again, Matt Schnell has all the skills in the world, just doesn't have a chin, and as always is very worrying for him. His last fight was against Cody Durden 7 months ago. Again, Jimmy Flick, good wrestler, decent power in his hands. I won't say it's super high skilled like a Steve Urseg, who's very good on the feet, who's gonna catch him and put him out. You would definitely see like the big power shots that Jimmy Flick's gonna throw at you. So I'm gonna go with Matt Schnell here. I think he's going to look a lot better on the feet. He can wrestle a little bit, but so can Jimmy Flick, so I think that's going to cancel out. But I do like Matt Schnell on the feet here, maybe even getting a TKO on this one. I think if you're betting, Jimmy Flick definitely looks pretty good as an underdog, plus 225, because he definitely does have that power that can put Matt Schnell out. But I just think Matt Schnell is just a different skill level than Jimmy Flick at this point in his career. So I'm going to go with Matt Schnell. I am worried about this pick because he doesn't really have a good chin, but I think just the skill levels at this point against a guy like Jimmy Flick, I think it's just two different levels here. But maybe he just gets caught. I don't know. I feel like Jimmy Flick's pretty predictable on the feet when he throws his power shots. So I'm going to go with Matt Schnell here. What was the last couple? Nate Maness, he went to a decision with. Costa has good power. Charles Johnson KO'd. Okay, I'm going to go with Matt Schnell by KO in the second or third round. I think he just breaks down Jimmy Flick, avoids the big power shots. Let's move on. We have Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz. I'm going to go with Ikram Aliskerov. Got KO'd by Robert Whitaker, but that's kind of the only rough part of his resume so far when entering the UFC here. He hasn't been too active, which is not really what you want to see. Again, he got KO'd 9 months ago, so maybe it was a good time to have some time off, but Andre Muniz is just not very good. He got KO'd by Paul Craig. I know, I think he was just taken down and then whooped up with TKO punches, but Muniz is not very good on the feet. He's a grappler, but I feel like Aliskerov just is a too high level of a wrestler, and he's not going to get taken down by Muniz. He's not going to be put in bad positions on the ground against Muniz. If anything, I think Aliskerov, with his striking, he is a little chinny, but I don't see Muniz taking advantage of that. So I think Aliskerov is just going to be way better than Muniz on the feet in this fight, and I think he TKOs Muniz probably in the late first round of this one. So let's move on. We have Randy Brown versus Nicolas Dalby. I'm going to go Randy Brown here by decision. Nicolas Dalby is one of those guys that's going to fraud check some of these prospects coming up. But we've seen Randy Brown against, the Muslim Salikovs, who's always seems like the oldest guy in the division, and is decently skilled as well, but always finds ways to win. Beat Muslim Salikov by KO, had a nice win there, and then beat Elizeu Zaleski, who's also fraud checking some of these guys as well. So Nicolas Dalby is kind of very similar to Zaleski, where he has decent takedown defense and good enough striking to outstrike some of these wrestlers and give them a hard time, like you saw against Renat. Pretty close fight in that one. Went to a split decision. Same thing with Elizeu Zaleski against Renat. Pretty close fight as well. I'm going to go Randy Brown here. I think the skills on the feet is just going to be super different in this one. He has really good range as well. 78 inches of reach. Will have a 3.5 inch reach advantage in this one. I think minus 205 is probably some good odds for Randy Brown in this one. I don't see Nicolas Dalby winning this fight. 40 years of age as well. He's not getting any younger. I'm going to go Randy Brown by decision. I think he just outpoints Nicolas Dalby on the feet. I don't think he gets taken down or anything like that. Doesn't get outstruck on the feet by Nicolas Dalby. He plays the range game. Just lands way too much on Nicolas Dalby. Again, Dalby's the kind of fighter that's going to defend the takedowns and take advantage of a lesser developed striking game from some of these wrestlers. So I'm going to go Randy Brown by decision. Let's move on. We have Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov. I'm going to go with Abus Magomedov. Michel Pereira was doing pretty good once he moved up to middleweight, but he kind of ran into Fluffy. He got out-grappled, got whooped up on the ground, just got broken, and then he lost by TKO. But he went through Ihor Peteria won that one by submission. Mikhail Osachik, who's a pretty decent fighter. Andrei Petrosky, decent fighter as well. But Abus Magomedov, I feel like if you look at his record, people kind of underrate him a little bit. I think he is a very good underdog in this fight as well, especially on this card. There are some decent underdogs, I will say, but this is a pretty decent betting card if you're pretty confident in some of these guys. So Abus Magomedov, his only two losses in the UFC has been against Sean Strickland by KO and Kyle Bahayo by decision. Two top 5 guys in the middleweight division. At the time, I think Sean Strickland was top 5. They kind of just threw Abus Magomedov in there after he whooped up Dustin Stoltzfus immediately within 40 seconds or whatever it was. Kind of just threw him to Sean Strickland, looked good in the first round, and then just gassed out. Again, lost to Kyle Bahayo, who's again in the top 5, but then beat Warley Alves, beat Bruno Bahia, who's a pretty good prospect as well. Won that one by submission. I think he does have a very balanced game, which I do really like to see. I think he paces out his fights a lot more as well. He's not getting thrown into a 5-round fight with Sean Strickland, where he just goes crazy in the first round, throws a lot of teeps, and plays a pretty heavy range game, even wrestles a little bit, has some good wrestling as well. But I feel like in his last couple fights, he's done a really good job at balancing out his game, doesn't throw too much, so he's not gassing out too much. And they are 3-round fights as well. So I do like this one for Abus. Has really nice range on the feet, will have a 5-inch reach advantage. Michel Pereira is always dangerous, but I feel like Abus is just way too well balanced for Pereira, and I feel like we haven't seen Pereira advance too much in his game for a very long time. So I think he was mostly counting on the fact that middleweights are just not as good as welterweights, so he's able to run through some of these unranked guys. But once you get into a legit contender like Fluffy, he just got completely demolished in that fight. But I think Abus can play a well-balanced game, play the range game, take down Michel Pereira at certain times. Maybe Pereira can land a pretty big shot on Abus and put him out and kind of break him in this fight and force him to give up. But I feel like that Bruno Bahia fight was a pretty good win for Abus Magomedov, and it shows kind of how much he's advanced in his game since debuting at the UFC. So I do like Abus Magomedov here. I think he wins by decision. People are saying Pereira by KO. Very interesting. I do like Magomedov as an underdog in this one. I just feel like Pereira's just very predictable in the way he fights. Like, he'll come out there crazy, but I feel like he's breakable. I feel like if Magomedov, I think he's breakable as well. But if Abbas survives that first initial round or maybe a couple minutes of the first round, I feel like once he gets control, he's going to keep that control on Michel Pereira. So let's move on. We have Giga Chikadze versus David Onama. A crazy underdog on this card. I don't understand how Giga Chikadze is an underdog on this one. I'm going to be completely honest. David Onama is very solid, but he's not top 15 solid. You know what I mean? Like, Giga Chikadze lost to Arnold Allen. Listen to these names and think where David Onama ranks against these guys. So Giga Chikadze, 8 months ago, lost to Arnold Allen. Top 5 contender, I think, at the time, maybe top 8. Won against Alex Gutierrez, fringe top 15 guy, fraud checker into the top 15 weight class in featherweight. Lost to Calvin Kattar by decision 3 years ago. Beat Edson Barboza by KO. Beat Cub Swanson by KO. If you look at Giga Chikadze's losses, you do not see someone like David Onama on that list, and I don't think he will. He's 36 years of age, and maybe people are thinking like his age will be the reason why he's declining, and that's why David Onama is going to be able to beat him in this fight. But we saw David Onama get dropped by Roberto Romero brutally. I've seen him get whooped up by Nate Landwehr. It was competitive in moments, like it was kind of back and forth. Like, he's whooping up Nate Landwehr in the first round, and he did drop him towards the end of that fight as well. But Nate Landwehr was on him. He made a name off of himself after that fight. He got a nice win against Gabriel Santos, but I just don't think these guys are Giga Chikadze level. Like, he's getting dropped by Roberto Romero on short notice, which I just don't like to see. I think Giga Chikadze is just way too high level for him. I think this fight is crazy that he's an underdog. Plus 150, I think, is insane. Very similar, the same reach. I'm going Giga Chikadze by decision. I think these odds are really off. I'd probably take advantage of them as soon as possible if I were you, but I don't even know how this works out. But in terms of if I can tell people how to bet, I don't know. I don't care either way. I think this is a really nice bet on the card. So I'll look at that one if you are betting. But I think Giga Chikadze, I'm very confident in him winning this one. I don't see him getting KO'd by Onama. Onama has improved a little bit, but it's just not the same level. It's just two different skill levels in this fight. So let's move on. We have Anthony Smith versus Mingyang Zhang, I'm going Mingyang Zhang. Anthony Smith at this point in his career, I think I even saw an interview where he said, like, at one point I thought all I had to do was get a title, but now I'm kind of just content, just fighting where I'm at. It's not really something you want to see. Mingyang Zhang has really nice power in his hands. Another one of these fighters where it's very hard to find some of his fights because they happen in Asia or whatever country it is, and ESPN doesn't have it, and then UFC Fight Pass won't let you play it if it passes like 6 months or whatever. But Mingyang Zhang, very good prospect, really nice power in his hands, really good striker, really technical on the feet, has a lot of skills. I think he just runs through Anthony Smith, and I'm being honest. Like, Anthony Smith, he was good a few years ago at maybe like, I don't know. I mean, he won against Vitor Petrino, who I thought was a pretty good prospect. But I feel like he's kind of just lost it a little bit. You know what I mean? I feel like we're on the downward slope of Anthony Smith. I don't see him beating anybody. And I don't think he's as durable as he used to be. Mingyang Zhang just has so much power. We'll put the pressure on Anthony Smith in this fight. I really like him to win this one by KO. Minus 500 favorite is probably correct. One of the few fights where a minus 500, minus 600 is correct. Is this one for sure. So I like Mingyang Zhang in this fight, winning by KO. Let's move on. We have Garry versus Carlos Prates in the main event. Very good main event. I'm really looking forward to. I actually think this one goes either way because Garry, he was looking decent on the way up. Like, you've seen him improve. Less improvement over the last maybe year or so, where he's kind of just played the range game, playing on the outside, and is a little bit more technical on the feet, isn't looking to take too much risk. And then you have a Carlos Prates who's very, I'm going to choose my shot. I'm going to bob and weave a little bit and pick my shots, throw some crazy ass kicks and throw a lot of power and use his hands, use his range pretty well. And this one is just very interesting because you have Garry who's going to play the outside, Gonna try and kick at his legs and point fight and maybe go for takedowns, which I don't think his offensive wrestling is too great. I think he has a takedown over Shavkat, but I think it was more of him switching grappling positions than anything. I don't think his offensive wrestling is too great. Carlos Prates' takedown defense is okay. I wouldn't say it's the best. Like, we've seen him get taken down on the regional scene. I was thinking going into that, like that Neil Magny fight, like if he gets taken down, I'm not going to choose him because I don't think Neil Magny's that good at this point anymore. But he KO'd Neil Magny. Garry, did he even KO Neil Magny in that? Yeah, he just dropped him a bunch. I think Neil Magny even took that one on short notice too. So I feel like even Garry's performances have just looked not as good within the last couple of years. And maybe the MVP fight was his best looking one within the last couple of years. But Jeff Neal, I feel like Jeff Neal, there were moments where I feel like a Carlos Prates, if it was Carlos Prates, would take advantage of those moments and land on Garry more and look to find the finish, where I don't think Jeff Neal was. I think Carlos Prates is just going to find the chin of Ian Garry. We've seen Ian Garry get whooped up by, not whooped up, but get caught by Ken and Zhang, get dropped, and then come back and put on a pretty great performance. But you just don't see that from Ian Garry anymore. I have always worried about Ian Garry's chin. I think Carlos Prates finds the chin, and I do worry a little bit in the later rounds with the amount of cigarettes this dude smokes and the amount of alcohol he drinks. I don't know how good he's going to be in the third or fourth or fifth round in this fight, but I think he can just find a shot. Maybe the third round. I think he'll be fine in the third round, but the fourth and fifth rounds, I don't know how good he's going to look. I'm assuming if it does get there, he probably won't look too great, and it'll mean Ian Garry's effectively using his grappling and taking him down and controlling him on the ground. And we have seen Ian Garry's grappling improve. That's one of the few things that he has been improving as of in the last, year and a half. I will say his grappling has definitely got a lot better since going to shoot box, leaving Kill Cliff for sure. I just think Carlos Prates can find that shot. I think Ian Garry's going to look for a takedown early. Prates is going to defend the takedown. If anything, you're going to kind of find the turning point in the second or third round where Ian Garry eventually lands that takedown. I feel like once Ian Garry lands that takedown, the fight's kind of over, because I feel like once he puts on that grappling pace on Carlos Prates, you're going to see Prates tire out a little bit. But I just don't see that happening. I think Prates, if anything, will defend the takedowns pretty well early on. Ian Garry's going to play the outside game, and I feel like if you're going to be offensive wrestling and offensive grappling, you're going to need to put your foot down a little bit and kind of, I won't say push the pace, but move the fight in the direction you want, and that's kind of not what you want to do against Carlos Prates, who's really good at finding his shot and putting you out. So I like Carlos Prates in this fight. I'm going to say second or third round TKO. I think he hurt Ian Garry pretty badly in the first and second round, and I think he eventually breaks Ian Garry and just lands way too hard, drops him down to the ground, lands TKO punches, maybe even protests after he gets TKO'd a little bit, but I think he just takes way too many punches. I don't think he goes out cold in this one, but I feel like Carlos Prates finds a shot, puts out Ian Garry, finishes it up by TKO strikes. I just don't see Ian Garry's, at least his style at this point, being able to just kind of ragdoll Carlos Prates. Like I don't see that happening. He's very, I don't want to say lanky, because the bottom half of his body is weirdly strong, but the upper half of Ian Garry's body is like two completely different things. And Prates will have a 3.5 inch reach advantage, which is pretty big. I just watched that Jeff Neal fight, and I think, wow, a guy like Carlos Prates can find the chin of not of Jeff Neal, but of Ian Garry. This was him, find that finish in a super close fight. So he did have a couple flashes against Shavkat, especially towards the end of that fight when he did have his back, but I do like Carlos Prates in the early rounds here. I feel like if Ian Garry does start to take down Carlos Prates, it is going to be very worrying, and I feel like Prates will eventually gas, but until these fighting nerds lose, I don't think I can bet against these guys at this point. They're just so disciplined. They're so good. Like, they're very confident in their fighting game as well. I don't know. I feel like when one of these prospects lose, maybe it'll be a little bit different, like the Roofies, the Silvas, and the Prates. Once one of them lose, there might be like a chain reaction or whatever, but these guys aren't losing. They're very confident in their fight game. I'm going to have to go with Prates finding the chin of Ian Garry. So let me know who you guys have down below in the comments. Let me know who you guys have down for your picks. I still think I didn't write down my bets for this week. That's the one mistake I did. Giga Chikadze, very good underdog. Abus Magomedov, I said -120 for that one. I think that's pretty good as well. -200 for Randy Brown. Might be a little bit of a steal there. I think that's way too low of odds if you like maybe parlaying him with Giga Chikadze. That's what I look at. I'm sure you might be able to get something decent on Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. Yeah, good, decent betting underdog for Jimmy Flick. I don't think he wins, but as an underdog, I think he's pretty solid there. So what about Cameron Saaiman? That's probably 50-50 as well. If you feel confident with either one of these guys, I think might be a good bet there as well. So, but I will say, I don't necessarily like saying locks, but I'm pretty confident in Giga Chikadze, pretty confident in Randy Brown. I'll probably parlay the two of them. So yeah, so those are my picks. Let me know who you guys have down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.